Welcome back to The Gently Used Human. Today, I'm beyond thrilled to introduce you to someone incredibly special, not just to the show, but to me personally. My guest today is Michelle Boulé. Michelle is an internationally renowned dancer, choreographer, teacher, and life coach, and has spent her life exploring the deep connection between movement, healing, and creativity. Her career has taken her across the globe, from performing on some of the world's most prestigious stages to guiding others in discovering their potential for personal transformation through somatic practices, energy work, and emotional movement. Michelle and I have known each other for over 22 years, and it has been such a gift to witness her journey, both as an artist and as a healer. What's so inspiring about Michelle's story is how she turned the challenges in her life, particularly a series of injuries that could have ended her dance career, into opportunities for growth and expansion. Her ability to tap into creativity and resilience through those moments of pain is nothing short of astonishing. In this conversation, we talk about how creativity is a gateway to presence, how life's challenges, whether they're physical injuries or emotional struggles or moments of uncertainty, can actually open doors to something greater. We explore the power of somatics and movement and healing, and how yielding to the movement instead of forcing control can lead to unexpected freedom. I also love how Michelle speaks about building the capacity to hold emotional and physical challenges as a practice that enhances how we move through life, both literally and metaphorically. This is a conversation filled with depth, vulnerability, and so much heart. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming the brilliant, soulful Michelle Boulé to The Gently Used Human. Michelle, welcome to The Gently Used Human. What a treat to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
Oh, such a pleasure. I think, besides my sister, who was on an episode in the very beginning, that you are the person who I have known the longest on the show.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Because we go back. Well, I go back with you. I don't know if we go back, but I remember being a 17-year-old dancer in New York City and coming to a show in Brooklyn, like in a warehouse.
In Bushwick.
And in Bushwick, yep. New York, in Bushwick. Yep. And I remember hearing about your name from friends. And I went to this show. I think it was Miguel Gutierrez's show.
In his loft in 2002.
In 2002, yes. Yeah. Well, now everyone, yes, in 2002. And
sorry.
No. I was 17 just a few years ago, but now you know it's 2002. And I remember you dancing, and I just was like, who is this creature? Who is this being that is like so magnetic and empowered and fluid and draws you in? And I was like, I hope to know this person one day. And here we are, just a few years later, 22 years later, is that? 22. Yeah, 22 years later. Wow. And it's such a joy to be in your presence, even just in all the incarnations we've had together over the years in different places all over the world. And I'm just really excited for all the gently used humans out there to like bask in the brilliance of your creativity and the ways in which you bring creativity into all these different fields, including coaching and more creative work and supporting others in their process. So I'm just so excited to jump in.
Well, my heart is touched, as you can see, because those moments are so special, you know, that 22 years ago, and then meeting you in Bali. I think that was like my next time seeing you. And we ran into each other in Stockholm. We had a call during the pandemic, a phone call. And it was just like, oh, wow, here's how this all intersects. And I just thank you so much for saying that about my dancing. And, especially knowing that has not been a seamless, flawless journey to be able to do that. But, for me, because I was injured when I was 16, told I wasn't going to be able to dance or didn't have the body for it. When I got to start again, it was almost like my prayer or my mantra was help me become available for more. And that it started with somatics, and then it went into, energy work and consciousness and emotional movement and eventually prosperity. It's just like, how can everything move as much, well, not as much as possible, but as much as needed. It's like, I like stillness too, but as much as needed in this brief life that we get. So thank you for reminding me of that sweet moment.
It was such a sweet moment. As I think about it now, I warm up and I just go, I still feel that sense of awe. I think that there's something about cultivating those moments of awe in our life that just elevates us in every moment.
I think they just bring us to ultimate presence, and it's like everything that keeps us from that disappears. And I think that is the beauty of art and creativity. There's no right or wrong. It's just like, here is what is. And of course, our minds are going to jump in and say, well, this and this. And especially as a young artist, in New York, you're like, well, how do I get ahead? And it's about not liking this thing
or survive.
Yeah, exactly. Survive. So I don't know, I think in its purest form, that wonder is part of creativity, and to be a vessel for it and to also behold it are just, those are immense gifts that I think we really need right now.
Yeah. I want to dive into creativity and what is it? How do we get it? But I want to go back to your story, because I think there's something really empowering in the fact that how we've even started at 16, you were injured. And as a dancer, I mean, that's it. You only had this body. And when we heard it, when we break it, when we, it's it feels like it's over. And how did you meet that and then become who you were and are as a creative force?
The first major injury I had was when I was 13, because I was trying to be a ballerina and I was wearing small ballet shoes that compressed my feet too much. I was giving myself lotus foot. And eventually I got neuromas on both of my feet. So I had surgery when I was 13. So that's when the nerve builds up, or tissue builds up around the nerve, and it's compressed between the metatarsal bones and the feet. So that was when I was 13. And there, I'm trying to fit into an external image. God bless my 13-year-old. And then at 16, someone told me at some point, Michelle, you got to decide what kind of dancer you want to be. And I was like, well, I don't know. What's on Dance Magazine? Ballet. I guess I'll do ballet. Is that how I can, it was all mental.
Yeah.
So I start trying to be a ballerina, and it doesn't work for my body. I went to the Boston Ballet summer program, and I just couldn't walk by the end of that. I had such bad tendonitis. I had no idea that my calves were like rocks, and, just the mechanics of what was happening. And how did I deal with that? It wasn't easy. I had a high school breakup that happened at the same time, and I would take baths and listen to Billie Holiday. And my parents are like, what's going on with our daughter? And, I had a good time being lost, a good chunk of time. And I went to college, had no idea what I was going to do, probably went to at least 10 different departments, urban planning, journalism, Spanish, English, to figure out what to do. And then one day I walked by a building that said dance department. And I was like, what? Oh, there's a dance program here? Peeked in the windows, went home. This is paper course catalog time, found a dance class I could take. And I started getting new information. I think that has always been for me, new information, new experience, the predecessor to change. So I essentially retrained my body in a more holistic way. And that was the beginning also for me of, I'm not going to treat the symptom. I'm going to learn how to look at the whole picture. I'm actually remembering, as I'm saying this to you, when we were in Bali and this exercise that you shared with us, a familiar one where it's like, okay, what's vital right now? And can we pay attention to that? So I think what happened was I started to find new pathways to tap into what is vital. And really, once I got that, I wasn't walking around saying, how can I dance again? How can I dance again? I was really in response. Oh, there's a dance program here. Oh, let me try this. Oh, let me talk to my teacher and ask her if we can have a mid-semester meeting like the dance majors. And she said, why aren't you doing this? And I said, because I can't. it was just so in my head that I couldn't do it. And she said, well, you're doing it. You've been in ballet again, and she gave me a scholarship and put me in the program. And I didn't know, I didn't even audition. And I just called my parents and I was like, hey, mom and dad, I got a scholarship. I'm a dance major now. Bye. Because not many parents, if they don't know about the arts or they don't want their child to go be an artist in New York City necessarily. No. So that's essentially how it went. And then as I moved to New York a week after I graduated, had a job doing online financial headlines for a company down in Wall Street, and was working with a choreographer for $3 per rehearsal, which was round trip subway fare at the time. So that's how I started. And I did get subsequent injuries, which were all blessings, right? Like, oh, okay, this hurts. And then I had this foundation from going to school at the University of Illinois to, let me grab my kinesiology book. Let me grab my anatomy stuff. Let me look at this imagery. Let me go take more Alexander lessons or Feldenkrais or whatnot. And it just kept unfolding in service of more movement, being available. So I feel like I feel like as an artist, maybe what you saw was just this agreement I made with myself when I was like 19 years old it's still a work in progress, but to get out of the way, and let something else move through.
It sounds like those moments of like no's, of injuries it sounds like as you view them now, they were doorways into Definitely. More possibility. That is such a hard place to enter into, to see that. How do you do that? Is that just part of your nature? Is that something you learn to like view this obstacle, this challenge, this rupture, this breakup, this whatever it is? I mean, as we sort of universalize it into an opportunity.
Yeah, I think what served me in that moment were two things. One, I wanted to dance, right? So there was something bigger that was going to guide me through whatever showed up. So that would be the first thing. There was a desire in my heart. And it was, I don't know. I feel like that was just maybe something intrinsic, or maybe some part of me knew just to follow a path. I love improvising. I love sensing. I love sort of intuiting. I love helping people with that too. And I think there's a mechanism in there. And then number two, this was in 2020. My dad got into a really nearly fatal bike accident. And we were able, my mom and I was at their house at the time. This was during the pandemic. My mom and I were somehow able to get into the emergency room with him while he was waiting, and he was drugged up on morphine, like body, just broken bones and lacerated organs and all these things. And he's healed and has been on his bike again. But, he said, there's always a silver lining. And then I asked him later, I'm like, Dad, you said that? And he's like, no, I have no memory of that. So when I heard that, I was like, oh, I must have learned something here about perseverance, about listening to a yes and holding steady. So I think there was probably environmental support with that as well.
Yeah. As you talk about like that sense of like, oh, I knew I wanted to dance. And I translate that for myself as like purpose, like some type of North Star guiding point. And I was hanging out and listening to Gabor Mate last weekend and Bessel van der Kolk, and they were saying, interestingly, kind of in parallel, that one of the antidotes of trauma, and trauma could be various things in this way, but one of the antidotes is refinding a sense of purpose. And it really hit home of like, as we keep coming up against these obstacles or obstructions of life or of a dance career, things like injuries, to have a sense of purpose as a driver is such a nourishment. And when we lose that, when it gets lost, when we feel lost in that sense of purpose, it's like there's no one driving the car forward around the obstacles.
It's very painful. It's very painful. That was my my year at 16 years old in the bathtub listening to Billie Holiday. I know I was only 16.
We're allowed existential crises at 16.
We are, but I think it's the conditioning is so strong. I feel like it's the desire to belong that is so strong. Like I want to give us credit. We want to belong, right? So a lot of times we set aside who we are and we lose that purpose. So, I think artists know this well because a lot of times their art practice, their dancing, their acting, it's a safe space. It's like, I'm not getting this. And I love my family. I'm so grateful for how I grew up. It wasn't perfect, but I needed this space to be able to access more of myself. And I feel like, as you were talking about this thing about purpose, what came to my mind too was Richard Rudd, who developed the Gene Keys, says we all carry an aspect of the great, or a fractal aspect of the great wound. I'm paraphrasing. But there is a big wound that I believe we are collectively evolving. And as I got into healing work, because I was injured, I started just to understand this is about wholeness. And as a dancer, I started to understand if some part of me was not in agreement with the movement, with the choreography, it was going to hurt. It was going to hurt me. Yeah. I would get injured. So this sort of, we're so much more in a holistic way of being and healing now. But I literally had that map in my body and this purpose calling that did give me somewhere to go. And I want to say this for folks too. I did not set out and say, I want to dance on this stage in New York and here in Paris and teach in Hong Kong. I didn't have those laid out because I think sometimes people think I must have this extremely clear vision. And I didn't. I don't know. There was a felt sense that this was my yes and this was my yes. Oh, and I'm going to go talk to this person. With Miguel, the choreographer I worked with for 15 years, I said, I went up to him and I was like, can we do another project after our first project together? That gave him something to let go of what was no longer part of his path. And then we started, working together for 15 years and we made a lot of history with that. Yeah. So just a lot of different pieces come together to support our journeys. And I think if we have that knowing just to receive them, wonder with them, play with them, I think that is that moment where we end up places we never thought we would. And I say that even now, like, I want to welcome that into my life. I want that for other people. I want people to know what I like to say, that our life is our greatest creation. We get to be part of it.
I want to take a moment to give a loud shout out to the Embody Lab, which is one of the most incredible resources for body-based and somatic therapies. This show is all about healing, and the Embody Lab does exactly that. Whether you're on your own journey of transformation and discovery, or enhancing your skill sets in your career as like a coach or a therapist, a body worker, or really any career where you are supporting other gently used humans, the Embody Lab is your place for deep, inspiring, and impactful workshops, certificates, masterclasses, and an incredible community of like-minded folks. I love the Embody Lab, and so do so many other people that call it a platform to come home to over and over again. The Embody Lab is giving my listeners an exclusive offer, a one-time 10% off code to enhance your embodied well-being. All you have to do is go to theembodylab.com and use the code GentlyUse10 at checkout. I think of all, like, you and I have a background in improvisational dance. A lot. Contact improvisation and a lot of different forms of movement, expression, authentic movement, improvisation. And I think about, the times I would go in and work as a psychologist in like corporations and with CEOs, and I would start to bring in a little bit of the improvisational dance because it felt like the things we acquired, the skill set, the ability to shift in the ebbs and flow of life, in moment by moment, was so applicable to how to live.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was like, what if all of us could acquire some of that skill or that knowing of like, oh, I have this idea of how I should dance, and then I find that there's this new way in which I can move there's other people dancing around me. And I'm really taking that in and shifting and adjusting and still with myself and going, oh, I never expected this dance to be the possible or to emerge. And it's in the same way I think about like, these moments where we're in the thick of it. And when we can sink into the thick of it and find these micro and macro adjustments in relation to what's here, it is that improvisation of life. Totally. And it's so much less sticky.
Yes,
and
I
fucking
agree.
hard. And it's fucking hard.
It is hard. And first of all, I love watching your body as you talk about this, just like moving in these subtle ways. Cause we're feeling it out. It's like our animal nature coming through. And one thing I say, cause I have developed a movement practice over time, which came from another story, which I just always say in this movement practice, moving with innate wisdom, part of these one dance sessions that I lead, can you just be present with? Right? Because the thing that we do so quickly is we want to do something with the experience, right? So we start to contract around it. And then one of my teachers would say, you stop the light from coming in. Light is trying to come into your body or energy or whatever you want, however you want to think about it. And then your mind comes in or your love, our gotta love on our fear-based ego comes in and the movement stops. We go back to what's familiar. So I just love using this tool all the time to be present with. And man, my mind wants to figure stuff out. That's how I'm designed. It's like, but I had a moment once with two coaches, mentors I was working with, and I was working with them, a VIP day for the three of us together for 4 hours. Something very uncomfortable came up for me. And one of them left to go to the bathroom. And I looked at the other one and I was like, what do I do now? And she's like, nothing. And I was like, oh, okay. For a person who likes to do, that's sort of like doing where it's not required. So I just needed to be with the discomfort. And I think as dancers, it's like, okay, here's this. There's no, if we take it back towards function, there's no right or wrong. It's like, is it allowing me to do this movement? I would say to students, are you breathing? Like, here, try to jump without breathing. Now breathe. Like, neither is better nor worse, but which action, which state of being, which quality is going to help you express what you want to express?
That also brings up this sense of like, I think for a lot of people at home, they're like, oh, we're talking about dance and creativity. And it's like, oh yeah, I go to the club or I dance as a kid, or maybe I have a child now and they dance and I dance with them. And I'm not quite sure like the relevance of dance in my life as a banker or as a dentist or as a parent. And I think it's hard to explain all the time, but it's so relevant, that sense of freedom and choice. I mean, I think as we move through our life, often, as we get older, our the potentiality for literally our physical movement through space shrinks. Our sense of choice shrinks. Oh, I've already been in this marriage, or I've already been in this career for so long. And so we lose that sense of like choice.
Yeah. And a word that comes up for me around this too, as you're saying this, is permission. Like permission. If for a person, the dentist, the banker, whomever, to know, I have permission to be in my body in a certain way.
Yeah.
Last night I was teaching a movement class and this beautiful young man he kept having this face, holding his face in a certain way. And I was like, hey, do you notice what's happening with your face? And then, he starts to relax his muscles and it's just like his whole body changes. So again, like the dentist does not need, my brother's a dentist. The dentist does not need to go to dance class, but this permission to, like, our movement is a map. It's like a recorder and it's a place of potentiality. So how we allow ourselves to move, like learning to dance well, I used to say is learning to live well. And I would get people teaching in New York and non-dancers. I remember a writer was in my class once and she was just like moving her hands. And I was like, oh God, she's not getting this. Shoot. I was getting afraid. Like she wasn't getting the experience. And this was in this open movement practice. And then afterwards she came up to me and she was like, that was incredible. And I was like, oh, okay, here's my judgment on what this also needs to look like as a dancer. And she's having a profound experience. Like, let me get out of the way and let her have her experience. So I think we see dance, people see what's on TV and they just jump to that. But I think we're talking about movement. We're talking about creative expression, and that can exist. I said this in one of my in my monthly program during our movement component. This woman went and made a sandwich. She was like, I just made the sandwich in a different way and it felt so good. She needed to eat. I was like, you do whatever you want. People fall asleep. Like, so it can imbue like every aspect of our being. And I feel like there's real blessings in that.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you say that the dentist doesn't have to go to a dance class, but I will say also, I think like finding different venues or vehicles to restore a sense of choice and movement is profound. It's like we might imagine, okay, someone is in grief, for example, and they feel like a sunkenness, a shrunkeness, and the inability to expand out. And just the invitation to maybe even move deeper into the shrinking. Like that's a movement too. And totally. I've done that with people who have been in grief of like, we don't have to expand out, but maybe we can deepen in to meet what's here. And that's adding a new choice. Like that is a movement. That is a dance in a certain way. And to restore a sense of choice from that place, as opposed to a cognitive place of like, will I ever be able to get out of bed again? And that question is so prolific and hard to answer. I mean, we could say, yeah, of course you will in time, but it's something else to give someone an experience of a little bit of movement, a little bit of choice again.
Yeah, I hear so much love in that. As you say that, we need to go in. And we're in a culture, especially in the United States, I think of like out. And in 2002, I had an experience of studying in Vienna and in this dance program. And I remember this teacher, I don't know if you remember Krista Parkinson, like even as a young dancer, it's like, how can I make this bigger? And she was like, come in. Like, it was just like, I was too much in expansion. And like, I've shared that teaching with so many people. It's like, come back in. And then from there, and I like to liken that to like a cycle of the nervous system. It gets to go down this Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen story of, I don't know if you've heard this one, of the whale that goes deep, deep, deep under the ocean. And I would use this a lot in teaching. It's just like it goes into that darkness. And our nervous systems can go into that darkness. And when they're ready, like to get to the depth of it, right? Because she was suffering the post-polio symptoms, and she had to have someone help her understand that her level of rest was deeper. It felt like death, she says in this interview, but it was deeper. And she was able to let go deeper and then reemerge with a different level of vitality. It took some years, but I love what you're saying because it is a struggle for many people. I'm supposed to show up. I'm supposed to do this, and all this front facing that is such a part of our culture now. This contracting in there's so much freedom in that limitation too.
I love that story. Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen, for those who are listening, is the founder of or creator of body mind centering, which is a form of somatic body-based movement and therapy, and is really profoundly brilliant. I spent 10 years of my life studying with her.
Mm.
And she was a significant mentor, is a significant mentor in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it being a profound reminder that like when we're in it, like in the depths of shit, we're in the depths of a pain, we're in the depths of an experience, that there's actually still more depth to go. And it's in that depth that we have to go that feels like a death because it is a death of what we've known before.
Definitely.
And we have to move through that death to find something new. And it is so painful.
It is. And I just want to say for people that the support is there. You know, I think those are moments when I feel like we think I'm alone. And yeah, we are. There's this came up in one of my courses that I'm in. Lily Tomlin would say we're all in this alone.
Yeah.
You know, we are ultimately the one who has to cross the threshold on our own. But I just want people to know that there's so much help out there. You know, and I think it's important to remember that if there's a desire there, I believe there exists a fulfillment for that desire. And it's like, if we can even open up and say, okay, there's a solution here. There's a potential. Show me. I'm ready. And that I also feel like is a death. I'm going to let go of needing to do it on my own. You know, I'm going to surrender to actually maybe an intersection of someone else coming into this world with me that feels very vulnerable and just be held in the ways that we all need to be held at various moments in our lives.
Yeah, I was thinking about the question that I was going to ask you. How do we find these supports? And I think before we even jump into that, I was reminded almost immediately, like your voice was in my head, about that same way that you had an injury and then found this healing modality, and it almost like accidental, but clearly kind of fate.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is that I was in this choreographer I worked with for 15 years, Miguel Gutierrez. I was in New York, young dancer, taking lots of classes, just trying to meet people and see what I liked. And I went to his class and I was like, oh, this is hard. This is challenging. There's something that turns on in me inside of this. He's a weirdo. Like, you know, like, who is this freak that I want to spend more time with? Because I'm also a freak. We come to know over time. But I was in his class and I went to do, you know, this is contemporary dance. We're barefoot. I went to do this roll to the floor and my arm got caught in the roll and I tore something here. I strained something here. And I immediately felt my body, like I felt that reaction. And then I went up to Miguel and I was like, I hurt my arm. And I could hardly get my clothes on after, or like change my clothes, had to wear a sling. I ended up going to see, I think with the people I was dancing with at the time, I just said, who can I see for body work? And this woman, Karen Brown, was recommended, East Village. I go to her little apartment and she tells me for the first time about trauma in the body and how the nervous system if it can't fully process it and let it pass through, it will store it. So I just surrendered to her. I don't know. I trusted her. I let go more than I ever had in a bodywork session. And I get up afterwards and she's like, okay, try to move your arm because I couldn't lift it. And I try to move it and I actually passed out. I fell right into the corner of between her table, a glass cabinet, and her sofa. And I just fell right into this slot.
Oh, God.
That had never happened for her. She's like, okay. I was out for a couple minutes. I like had like memories going through my awareness. And that just started. And then she sent me to another practitioner in New York who I worked with for 20 years, a chiropractor, homeopath, applied kinesiologist, you know, the whole smorgasbord. And that sent me into this journey again of more holistic ways of working. That particular practitioner, when I went in for back pain at one point, you know, I was just like, can you help my back? It hurts to walk. And he's like, okay, he's doing his work. And he said, we need to work on your anger. And I was like, what do you mean? You know, it's just like, no, we don't. I was open and he does the work on me. And this is like 95th Street and West End Avenue. And I get out of that session and I cannot get on the train. I just walk. I walk and walk and walk like 50 blocks to get over to the east side and take my train to Queens. And I ate like one beet slice for dinner that night. And it wasn't a diet or anything. It was just like my body knew I couldn't stuff anything down anymore. And it was just like these little pieces that kept unfolding. And then my love for teaching too, it was like, okay, how can I share this in dance? How can I bring this? How can I bring my own struggles into the room and work on them through movement? But to go back and answer your question, how do you find these people? I think it's just simply posing the question. We didn't have the internet to the extent it is now back then, but you can go online and see what you have a response for. Like go on Instagram and, but I think also just asking people you trust. I would say I have quite a Rolodex of people that I see for all my self-care practices. And I love sharing that Rolodex with people. My best friend's like, you're like batting whatever a high batting average is when he uses my people. I don't know those numbers. So I think it's the asking and maybe also, do we need to know this, Scott? I wonder, like knowing that something's going to change, like something, this thing that we're talking about, something is going to die. And I think there's a lot of grace and care. If we really want to go through true transformation, I think we need to be kind to ourselves and not force that either. Because there's no award when we get to a certain place and like, ta-da, now we're done and we've achieved it and pat ourselves on the back. It's like, sorry, buddy, it's going to keep going. Like, enjoy the ride.
Yeah, you don't get that gold medal in the healing Olympics. I mean, you do, but if you're striving for it, you just never know when you're gonna be able to walk up on the pedestal and get it.
Yeah. As you say that, I'm like, just why don't we let ourselves do that like at least once a week or once a day, just for ourselves?
Get on the healing pedestal and be like, I fucking did it.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I need that. Yeah.
How often do we pause and we take an evaluation of all of our support systems? Like who in my life, especially when shit is going down, we're focused on that. And to sort of pause and write down, here are all my support systems. Here are my communities. Here are and for so many of us, we can go, I'm alone. I have no support. And to even find, okay, the earth is still underneath me.
Yeah.
Okay, there's that. Even finding these little ones, these little moments of support is so essential. And then, perhaps even seeing the extended network that forms as you write it down.
Definitely.
And then to lean into that as much as we can of like, I know I've been recently in a very big grief process and I left where I was. I just had this insight to travel cross country and surround myself in a support community that was relatively small. And I leaned into it, which is not something I'm comfortable with ever. And I just was like, hey, and I even said to folks, I'm like, I need support. Yeah. And I've been, both of us have been in support roles for so long that it's hard to ask for support. And I did. And I started, and it just networked out to a degree that I'm like, oh, I have such a bigger community. I didn't even know I could be supported. And it was like an improv. Like one thing led to another. Like I went to an event, which led to this person, and I went and hung out with coffee with them. And I just started crying and they held me. And I've never had the experience. That moment, I integrated this experience in my body of feeling safe for the first time in so long.
Yeah.
But it's these little, almost random encounters that I don't think are so random when we start to lean into, ask for the support and follow the possibilities or these little moments of intuition of going into it.
Yeah. I love that you're acknowledging the difficulty of it because I can totally relate to that too. It's just, I remember even in I think this might've been my early 30s after a breakup, and I was at my parents' house and I wanted to cry, and I was like, I can only cry alone upstairs. And I was just like, wow, look at this pattern. I'm 30 and mercy, God bless. However, but it's just like, oh, wow, look at this. And it's hard. And I even had a friend do this to me. It might have been earlier this year. We were out to coffee and she's like, Michelle, I want to hold you. I want to support you. And we had a little conflict we needed to resolve, but it pierced my heart. And we're holding hands at the coffee shop. I'm just like tears pouring down, because there is, as you're saying, like there's a level of setting aside that has of our own needs that has its shadow and its light.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, for people who are support people, it is something to navigate. And I think it's also, hearing your story, important to also reiterate to folks that it is hard to be held. It can be.
Yeah.
Can be hard to be held because you are so vulnerable, right? That thing that from all of our early core wounds, we're trying to protect with all our might. We don't even realize all the personalities and masks and worlds we've built around that. And then we get a moment in our lives where, this is like the silver lining where we're given the invitation to let it go and we can take it or not. And in the end, it doesn't matter. And with this choice, like there's going to be a different result depending on what you choose.
And those vulnerable moments when we're like, as you're talking about like a breakup or a fight or a job loss or whatever it is, where it's like our energy is immobilized. We don't have it, which means that some of our old defense systems, our survival strategies don't have the energy to even enact. And so we're left even in this more raw, vulnerable place, which I think is this potential, this moment of potentiality where actually we can rewire. Not that I would ever fucking wish anyone to be in the depths of pain that almost all of us gently used humans have experienced. But in that is also so fucking frustratingly these moments where we don't have the energy to hold our survival strategies is forward. And in that moment is such, the opportunity or the possibility for something different or to experience something different.
Definitely. And I hear you bringing in the tribe or the collective, and I feel like as we go through these experiences ourselves, they're offerings and gifts to the rest of humanity. Like I feel like there's a different level of grace that we can give as we watch someone else go through that journey. They're opening doors for us. You're opening doors for someone else as you go through that journey. And not that that's like top of mind when you're a mess. No. I know this is going to help someone else. I mean, I don't know. For some folks, that might be a real driver. That might be a real purpose, right? Yeah. Like in some ways, I think I can say that because it is for me. I can say performing on stage at various times when there's a monologue. I performed in a piece that I did with Miguel in 2007. And then the last piece I did with him in 2014, 2015. It was an offering. I don't tune into the news that much, but I might read a story and then I would know going on stage that night, it make me cry. Like I was holding some piece of that for someone. This is what I could do. I wasn't out in whatever country on the front lines doing this work, but I could at least hold this energy and compassion and some level of witnessing through my artistry that, we know too much about quantum physics, I feel like, to think that would not have an effect somehow. We're too connected. So yeah, I feel that. I feel the gift in watching and being a part of, like jumping in and being a part of this larger evolution it's happening in a big way right now, So I think everything we're saying too is like, how do we find the people and the tools? I love that list making. I've done that too. My 30s, I was going through something hard. I was like, who are my friends? let me write them down. The same breakup. I'm like, okay, this person, this person, this person. And it's messy and it's glorious.
This show is also brought to you by the absolutely stunning and powerful tools of transformation that are created by Omala. Oof, even the name Omala transports you to a place of flow and vitality. These are some of my favorite products ever. They have an amazing color-changing yoga mat that responds to your temperature and presence and reflects back your posture in real time. There's this incredible smelling skin balm candle that heats up to activate all the essential oils and vitamins that your skin has been craving. I mean, look, if I could live in a giant bath of this candle, I would 100% do it. They also have these journals that lead you into profound insight, and then you get to plant those journals to create a stunning flower garden. What? I mean, if that's not deep and inventive, I don't know what is. If you're someone who desires to live a luxurious flow of life and who believes in transformative wellness, then you have to check out Omala. Omala is giving my listeners an exclusive discount to treat yourself to something that is as special as you, boo. All you have to do is go to omala.com, that's OMALA.com, and use the code DrScott10 at checkout. And a portion of every purchase goes to an incredible charity. You got this. You know, you said something earlier about like extending out, right? And this propensity to extend out. And, you know, as we're talking about this, holding witness is also offering a gift is something. And I think about like the art of expression, which is, you know, as an artist, as a dancer, like you learn ideally to also be able to transmit, to express, and to share. You know, as an audience member, I mean, I go back to that 2002, and I just felt so moved by the way that you were existing and being. And again, that sense of awe comes, but it's a gift on the receiving end. And, you know, to translate that to what we were just talking about, to be in that vulnerable state, to really share with someone from that place. I think so many of us, including myself, can feel like we're a burden, can feel like we are too much, that we are dumping, that we're, you know, and someone who can truly be there for us, whether it's a therapist or a friend, it is a gift and a reminder of our humanity to receive it. And that's also not hard. And so I say that because I think it's this reminder that when we're in our joy or in our love or in our anger or in our sadness, to be, not to dump it on someone, but to express and to share, to be in it ourselves and to allow others to be there with us is a gift.
Yes. And I think it's also a skill that we need to learn how to build. And I call this capacity building. So when I'm in when I'm guiding someone in a movement practice, it's like we're just opening the door a little bit more. Like even if it just cracks open, because I know you're gonna get an impulse. Your body's gonna want to, and then something's gonna be like, you know, like the open, close. And it's like, okay, stay with that. And then I do believe there's some desire, some expression that's going to be like, just, okay, open for half a second more. And you just built your capacity. And this comes up a lot with emotion, which I actually feel just pretty darn comfortable letting it move through me. I mean, here, it's happening here. I feel it and it just like passes through me like a screen, but I don't shut it down. So I may cry, but you know, in a practice, it's like, oh, okay, I'm safe enough to feel this much more. And in that moment of being present with it, you just built your capacity. And I know in another somatic modality, Feldenkrais, it's like, I'm going to paraphrase again, but it's like your body starts to experience that potential or that freedom of movement, and it is going to want more. It's like harmony begets harmony. This is from another modality I studied called biogeometry. It wasn't about getting rid of what was quote unquote bad. It was about bringing more harmony into the system, into your body or into an environment. And that will expand just like what you focus on grows.
Well, I'm curious. So like for those who are listening or watching, how might they grow more of that capacity and or the alchemy of more harmony when they're really in their fields, when they're in their experiences of life?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I do feel like it's having someone else there who can hold that space while you can't, right? Like, so to have someone who knows how to do this, who is consciously choosing how to do this. And I know for myself, it was people who I paid or I hired, I went to some low cost clinic or something that started to hold the space for me first. Then it was more my friends and my relationships. It was like I needed this other safe container, which so many of us do that, to be able to start that. I also think doing something like meditation. I think sometimes a common thing with meditation is people think I need to be still. I need to, if emotion comes up, just come back to stillness. And I heard someone recently talk about this in a way that's in some ways, if we look at this movement and flow as the feminine, which is not a gender, it's just a quality, we're actually we're bringing in a harsh masculine that says stop, rather than let me be the container for this while you cry during your meditation. So I feel like it's like we don't even realize how we're stopping ourselves all the time, and we're losing a healthy relationship of that masculine and feminine energy. The third thing I'll say is just a movement practice. If a person can even just set their timer for 3 minutes and just say, okay, I'm going to listen. I'm going to do whatever comes up, and maybe nothing will come up. 1 minute if 3 minutes is too long. Some container. What it is it's a container, and it's a commitment to the container, and then the container can hold you.
Yeah.
And what helps you commit to that container? The desire, the purpose, a devotion, if that works for you, to something greater, to love, to someone you love, something you love. Like that's a container too. So I feel like there are all these layers that a person can bring in. Again, simply another person, meditation practice, a movement practice that acts like meditation, but lets you be in your body in a way that is free, and you're witnessing the whole time. So it's not like I'm going to, you're not, I think there's this witnessing capacity that we can develop also. I'm not going to just totally lose my mind. I'm going to simultaneously be present with, like, there's an awareness that's with it. And I know I've developed this for decades. I've been in some really intense trauma work, and it's kind of funny. I'll be in it and I'll be like, ah! And then I'll look at my friend and be like, I'm fine. And then I go back in it. It's just like, and I don't know. I think that's because I've been doing it for so long. It's like the witness can jump out, but then she can jump back in, and she can also get lost in it too. So hopefully does that make sense in terms of the tools for that?
Yeah, I mean, I really hear like the multiple layers to which we might build our own sense of capacity to hold. It might start with someone else giving us that sense. It might be someone who, and then even a friend or a partner, or like learning to ask and trust that with other folks. And then even it becoming our own sense of like a timer. I love that. Like a 3 minutes is a container to experience something. And then we start to get a sense of like, there's something that's holding us, and we might then be able to do it for ourselves. Sometimes I even like the practice of like cocooning, like wrapping myself in a blanket, or I've done that with clients too, of just like, here is the physical sense of being contained, and notice how you can kind of move or wiggle or squirm let go inside the hammock or the blanket, and just feel what that's like. And then know that that is within your ability, because you've had this experience now, to feel a sense of container and movement within it.
Definitely. I call my movement practice, I refer to it as rehearsal for life. As people are moving with me, I'm like, you guys, this is rehearsal for life. Like, you're safe. There's no stakes here.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no stakes. It's and that kind of container too, where you can practice and you're not in the heat of an argument with your partner or your friend or your parent or child or whatever. It's like, okay, I can do this in and of myself, which is ultimately the work.
Yeah.
Almost all the time, right? Like what's happening in here? How am I regulating so that I can do the thing we're also here to do, which is relate?
Beautifully said. And I love that phrase, rehearsing for life, because I mean, when we talked earlier about like, why are we talking about dance? And like, and for you and I, it's so clear. And I think, we're not talking about like just going on stage and tap dancing, although that's awesome too.
Totally.
And we have tap dancing friends who are amazing and brilliant and philosophers, and it's, ingenious. And what we're really talking about is like these opportunities of rehearsal and practice for things that it integrates into our life, like the ability to feel, oh, I can turn to my right, or I can turn to my left, or I can follow an impulse and curl down into a ball and then spring back up. Those might sound like, oh, just playfulness, but they are rehearsal for life. If I know I can do it in this environment, then I can do it in environments where there's more stressors.
Definitely. It's the capacity building.
It's capacity building.
Yeah. There's also, I just want to say this too, kudos to artistry, and that consciousness is, I actually love a lot of abstract art too. And I do have a story of seeing an Agnes Martin, famous abstract painter, no longer alive. There was a show that she had at a Chelsea gallery. I can't remember which one it was. And it was the last day, it was about to close. And I looked at the photos online and I was like, do I need to go to this? I was like, I think I can skip it. But then something said, just go, Michelle. So last hour, I get off, on 8th Avenue. I'm booking down the avenues to try to get to the gallery. And I walk into that space and I'm just like, whoa, what is happening here? Because as simple as the gesture was, big square canvases with a gray line and a white line or something like that, I think what we tap into is a quality of consciousness.
Yeah.
So play as a quality of consciousness, surrender, even just like, I'm going to hold my arm and I'm going to let it go. I'm going to in dance class, you might do something where I do this a lot. It's like, have someone else fully support the weight of your arm or your leg. That's a consciousness of letting go.
Yeah.
Like every move we make, every gesture Agnes Martin makes in that painting is a response to an awareness or a consciousness. So I might not be able to say with my left brain, well, it's this, 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 and this, and it equates to this and this and this. But my right brain, which is pretty strong, is like, oh, I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel that. And that has a potency, which our culture doesn't always value that transmission. And we need it. Of course, we're in our ebbs and flows as a society and a culture at large. Like we're swinging to one end and we're swinging to another end. But I do just feel like, and I'm staring at this really beautiful drawing I have that inspires me. It was this artist who was a researcher and a healer, and she would make drawings to heal her patients in the 1900s in Switzerland, Emma Kuntz. And there's something that is also so scientific about it, but it has mystery also. And I think that place of mystery is, I can feel it in my gut. It's like a necessary ingredient for transformation, for love, for pleasure.
Yeah.
For death.
If we can't hang out with mystery, I believe they call that anxiety.
Oh,
It's one of the definitions for anxiety is the intolerance for the unknown. And I think, I don't know about you, but going on stages night after night and the live, like I think, we've done film stuff too, but like it's set, but being live on a stage where anything can happen, and it does. It really does. And like really embracing the possibility that anything could happen, and not knowing what to do in the next minute and having to sort of sort it out and figure it out. And the repetition of those type of experiences like builds the reps to be able to do that in life of going, ooh, I mean, I'm still an anxious person, but like, I think I have more capacity especially when I'm feeling more grounded and safe, to be able to go lean into, I don't know, and sort of let it sort and emerge, let the moment become an emergent experience.
Totally. It's like, I'm sorry, I love you, my controlling side, but you're not going to drive the car right now. Like, go over there, keep yourself busy. Control is not going to work in this moment.
Control is not going to work. And there are, those moments where we are the controller, the manager part of ourselves doesn't have any capacity, like especially in grief or something, a breakup, like you said, it's like, I can't control any of this.
And yeah, that is simultaneously like the most scary and wonderful feeling. I could just, as we're saying it, my gut is like, oof, oof, oof.
Yeah.
I thought this was my life to control. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. And the deep breath, like as you were talking about performing, I was just like, my feet like were literally trying to plant into the floor, and the deep breath, you took that deep breath and I was like, okay, there it is.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of all our gently used humans out there as you're listening or watching, and you're like, in that battle, each of us has been in that battle of like the absence of control. We have these moments, where in the absence of control, where we collapse, or to use a word from Bonnie Bay-Mitchcone, do we yield into the process? And it's painful, and it doesn't mean it's joyful, but we're like in the flow of the absence of control. I think that is the only thing that allows us to be in that flow.
Yeah. I mean, it's, this is another dance thing. It's like that paradox of you can't feel the weight of your body until you let it go.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of dancer talk, but
yeah. Well, or in Aikido, form of martial arts that I studied for many years, like the more like you're getting flipped and tossed and torqued, and the more you yield into that process, the less likely you will be injured. The more control that you try to have as you're being projected through space, the more likely you are to be hurt.
Yeah. And as you say all of that, my body is like going through all these empathetic like reactions of like, ooh, I can feel when it wants to control. Oh, I stopped something, and again, I think this again is a little bit of nerding out, but I think sometimes people think then they have to just let go of everything.
No.
Then I'm like, I like say like Michael Jordan did not do those big old slam dunks by like being loose and free. It was there was an organization of like, what is the right amount of tension? What is the right amount of force and release? And there's a mastery and there's an artistry in that. So it's like, it's the dance.
I love that you're saying that, because I think, like if we look at like Pepin Chodron's work of like, and this art of letting go, it doesn't mean we lose integrity or we toss our core sense of self out the body or anything like that. There's another way in which we can be here and be with and let go enough, or let go a little bit, or yield. I like the word yield better than let go. It's kind of to move into.
Yeah.
I love that, as we start to find a landing, I just want to say, like, the same experience I have of you as a 17-year-old in that moment of awe and feeling like there's an up-leveling of qualities of experience that I can have just by witnessing you. I still get that now in listening to you and sitting across from you in this space. I'm just like, I want to thank you for expanding the offering of what it's like to have a multitude of experiences and qualities of living and being.
Thank you. It's an honor. And I do feel like, we're talking about control, and we've also talked about the word permission. And I feel like one of the reasons I do this work is because I know what it feels like to feel locked up. I know what it feels like to be limited. It's like I know how to imprison myself. The pain of that, the pain of the separation. And again, everything just is, it's not bad or good. And I also know the experience of that freedom, and if someone listening to this can just tap into the quality even, right? Like the energetic quality, even if I didn't say like, do this and then this and then this and then this.
Yeah.
There's a quality, just like you play a note on a piano and then the other notes are going to resonate. Or I have this little pan drum in my house and I might cough and I hear the pan drum resonate because it's on the same frequency. It's just so like, there's a frequency that we can offer that starts to open the door for someone else. Like, I mean, come on, world peace. maybe? Like at the very least, inner peace.
Yeah.
And it's a joy. It's just, I just find so much beauty in it. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. And thank you for saying that. I know what it's like to imprison myself or to be imprisoned, and to also have such moments of freedom. And I got to witness those, and they transmit. They give hope. I'm like, oh yeah. I mean, as you're saying that, I'm like, oh yeah. Now, 22 years later, I'm like, oh yeah. It was the taste of freedom. It was the taste of different flavors of life, but it was also like the resonance of someone who has known what it's like to be imprisoned within themselves, and to find some elements of freedom from that. And that is life confirming.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for being on the Gently Used Human, my love. Where can people find more of you and connect with you and practice with you?
Yeah, go to michelleboulé.com, MICHELLEBOULE.com. Same on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Michelle Boulé. I look like this. There's not too many Michelle Boulés in the world. And if something resonated in this conversation we've had, I'd love to just get a message and hear, like, these conversations they're very meaningful. We don't want to exist in a bubble or a vacuum.
No. Michelle, I love you. I love every reunion we get.
I love you too.
And to all our gently used humans out there, we love you. Thank you for listening to the Gently Used Human podcast with Dr. Scott Lyons and friends. Visit gentlyused.com for fun extras. And don't forget to spill the tea and gossip about the show with all your friends and frenemies. And show some love by giving us 5 stars and leaving a review in your favorite apps. This helps us connect with all the other gently used humans out there. Oh, and by the way, you look fierce today.